the wilds of suburbia. I'll make today's a pretty short episode. Uh, I, I'm your host, Sir Chad Everett Broshears. Oh, I got a little bit of apple left on my titty. Oh, look at that. Ahoy. Alright, alright. So today's episode is on creating the next chapter. Our past serves our past serves us with such a great value as long as you understand how to like read your own past. If you look at it this way, it's your past is established. It's something that you can't change. But if you have you know ideas of things that like, okay, I'm not happy about the way this went, or I missed my target by doing it this way. Now, that's to help calibrate your next move so that the future become more obtainable in the way that you want it to be. Now, which is what our goals are. So you create the next steps, the next chapter. So what's interesting to me, and this is the first time I've had this experience, it's January 30th. I'm sorry, not January 30th, December 30th. No, I'm sorry, it was December 31st. I woke up and the very first thought I had was, I accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish this year and more. And I accomplished multiple very long-term life goals, but I didn't realize that I did in a way that I actually had the depth of appreciation for it. So I woke up, the very first thought I had was that I accomplished these things, and then I explored that thought a bit more and reflecting on what exactly, like what I did and what I have been able to, what I accomplished in 2021, which people are like, oh, 2021 is the worst year, 2020 is the worst year, or whatever, because of the way things are going politically and with, this pandemic. So what came to mind while I was doing that reflection was that a lot of times, and in nearly all instances in my experience, has been whatever it is that you think you want, like whatever your goal is, you're like, I want to accomplish whatever that thing is. It usually has a different package than what it usually shows up with. So you may think, okay, well, I want it to be this red bow, this beautiful thing, and you get this, beautifully developed and packaged blue bow, package with a blue bow on it, and you're like, oh, okay, whatever, and you just cast it aside, waiting for that red one to show up. And that's how I've experienced goals being obtained. Is there are certain things where you're like, yeah, if I want to get down to something incredibly measurable, okay, well, my goal by the end of April 2022 is to be down to 4% body fat, and there's size gains as well along the way as goals physically that I have. So, ooh, a little motor, get it, little motor. Very measurable. I've done it before. Well, I've got down to 4.2. It's incredibly lean, but it's just, this is a goal for me over 40. But it's measurable. I've done it before. I know what it looks like. I know the transition points. I know the process, the experience of it, all of that. I've got that down. I've done it before. But there's a lot of things that I've wanted to accomplish that I was not aware of exactly how it was going to be. I just had this idea of the way that it was going to be based off somebody else's success. Well, I want my life to look exactly like that person had or has. And that's often not the way that it works. Yours shows up the way that it will show up for you. So again, it's in this package. So by that reflection, I went over it and I'm like, you know what? I've accomplished everything. Everything. Plus more. Which is another beautiful thing about it, is that not being overly attached to something other than obviously driven towards that goal, but not being overly attached to it and you get blinders on, that you miss other things. It's a fine line, right? You want to have enough direction of sight that you're not easily distracted, but you don't want to be so direct in sight that you miss life happening. So it's a delicate balance. So, but I'm telling you all of that because there was a point in time in my life, when I was a bit younger, where I said I don't want to experience something again. No, but I did not live in that I'm going to avoid it. I lived in the I will overcome it. Big difference. Avoiding is I'm not going down that alley. But overcoming it means if I go down that alley, whatever's in that alley is not going to take me out because I've adapted to the point that I am well capable of going through that alley, right? Somebody can jump out and attack you, right? I developed myself so that I would be capable of dealing with that type of threat, whatever it is, right? I'm not just saying like that is a physical threat, but using that as an analogy. You go down that alley, you go down that way of thinking, you go into that situation. I don't want to avoid things, I want to overcome them, whatever they are. So it's a big difference in thinking, even though it seems kind of subtle to a lot of people. It's significantly beneficial. So, so the next chapter is what I made a statement for in my past when I was like, I don't want to experience this again. So I started writing the chapters in the book for myself, which is a big difference than having life happen to you. You'll hear me say in episodes, and if you know me in person, life either happens to you or you happen to it. And I refuse to be a victim of circumstance. Now, doesn't mean that I'm not a victim of circumstance. It means that I won't accept that for myself and not develop. So constantly on that journey for development. So if I feel that I'm dealing with something that's a struggle, I'm going to work on overcoming it, no matter what it is. Even if I know, all circumstances considered, I had little ability here, I'm the one that put myself in the situation. And that's where I'm bearing the responsibility. So that's the process that I'm talking about as far as writing your next chapter. You have to be responsible for yourself in order to write it. Your next step, your next chapter, all up to you. Now, if you expect your next chapter to be written exactly like my next chapter, but you're just now starting this journey, it's a pretty good chance that it won't be anything like mine. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It just means that there's a pretty good chance it won't be like mine. You may not have the depth of development and be aware of what you're experiencing, or the actual outcome would have variable differences. That's, the tangible outcome or the non-tangible outcome, something about it or quite a few things about it may not be exact. And don't let that defeat you. You may be in the first chapter of your book. It's just keep writing it. There's, in my experience and the way I live my life, there is no greater thing to do than to continue to create the life you want. I do not want to live the life somebody else gives me. I don't care if that life is a life of ease. If somebody were to show up and give me, $1 billion or more, I wouldn't want that. Sure, I could do a lot of things with that money, but I wouldn't want to live my life at such ease because somebody else granted me permission to. Or the privilege of doing it. I want to create these things for myself. As to me, that's the real richness of life. Excuse me. The real richness of life is in the process of creating. And to me, the sense of potency, your ability to say something and it happens, potency, often referred to as power. I like potency more than power, just because it's the depth that comes out of it. But that's the way the word works for me. But I really enjoy that part. I'm going to do whatever that thing is, and then it gets done. And it's done because of the way that I've created relationships with myself and other people. It's not done by somebody else going, well, if I do this, maybe he'll show me favor, maybe he'll give me something. if I had, this unlimited amount of money, there's a pretty good chance that people would start changing their behavior because they want money from me, or connections. But most of the time, it's more money than connections. Let those two things be common together. I'd rather that they be genuine relationships that, I say whatever and, X, and then somebody else like, you know what, I agree, let's do X together. Or I'll help, whatever it is. That to me brings a depth and richness of life. That's what I'm talking about. So write the new chapters for yourself. Start today. You may just need to sit down and write out the index. That's fine. You're starting. So, all right, that's it. Uh, Now, this is obviously not the easiest thing in the world to do, but there is nothing better in my experience to do than to create what you want. Make your life potent, and you know, don't settle for what you're given. Create what you want. So with that, this is not always easy. Actually, a lot of times it's hard. Not everybody's going to support it, but there's no better endeavor. All right, till next time, stick with me. Let's get up to something. Get up to this with me. We'll create the life that you want. Until next time, I am your host, Sir Chad Everett Brochures, and this is Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. I'll see you.